Hi, I'm Logan T. Smith for Opinion Subject to Change, here to talk about why you should read reviews for movies you've already seen. But first, this video is not sponsored by the Illustrated Oxford Dictionary. It's like a regular dictionary, but it's got pictures, and it's really big, and it'll make it so your stuff doesn't blow away. So there's one main reason that breaks down into three sub-reasons on why you should read reviews for movies you've already seen. And that main reason is you need to understand if the reviewer you're reading is somebody that you should trust. And that comes down to three things. So first, you need to understand if your priorities and the reviewer's priorities are the same. Second, you need to understand how the reviewer communicates for you to be able to get the information out of the review. And third, you need to understand if you even agree with the reviewer. So first, you need to understand what the reviewer's priorities are. So every person who watches movies has slightly different priorities, and you can tell that by the wide selection of different types of movies that are out there. And you can even tell that in subcategories of movies. So, for example, musicals. Musicals are not my favorite type of movie. And that's partly because I don't really care that much about singing, and I really don't give a crap about dancing. You could have the greatest dancers in the world in the movie, and I don't care one tiny bit. Dancing doesn't do anything for me. So if you're someone who's looking to see if there's something in, like if there's a movie with dancing in it, and you're coming to me to see if the dancing is worth watching, you're wasting your time, because I don't care about that, I don't know about that, and I just am not going to be able to communicate to you if the movie with the dancing in it is good or not. I just can't do that, okay? And when it comes to music, it's more complicated because I do care about the music, but I might care about it in a different way than you do, right? I care much more about how the music compels the story and evokes emotion rather than how well it's performed. So for example, I really don't like it when in musicals or musical movies, a story pauses for someone to sing a song. And I think if you compare the original animated Aladdin, Disney's animated Aladdin movie, with the more recent remake of Aladdin with the live action, you can see this really hit the ground. So one of my favorite songs in all of movies that people sing, rather than just music, but songs that people sing, is One Jump Ahead in Aladdin. And I think this is a great song because it's a fun, upbeat song, but it also really establishes the character of Aladdin, it establishes the city of Agrabah, and it moves that story along. So it establishes the story, the characters, and the location in that song. And the story is happening while it's going on. And so that's a great song because it moves the story, it is fun to listen to, and it develops the characters. In contrast, there's Jasmine's song in the new live-action Aladdin, where the world literally freezes. Everybody around freezes, and she sings a song. Now, you know what? I don't remember if she performed that especially well. You know what? I'm sure she did, though. I'm sure that she performed that song exceptionally. But I don't care about that. That song breaks the flow of the movie. It takes it and just broken. It's terrible. So I hate that song. Not because I hate that song, but because I hate what that song does to the movie. So for me, the priorities are much different. Now, some people might go, oh, I love that song so much. It's a great song. And you know what? Maybe it is. But for me, it hurts the movie. And so that's something that you wouldn't know that about me until you've watched some of my reviews or you've watched me talk about it. If you knew me in real life, you probably know that already. There are those sorts of things that you got to know what the priorities are. Now, on the other side, there are things that I do know more about, that I'm more expert on, and I could tell you a little bit more about it and where my preferences are. So I have the experience of trying to watch movies with small children and being able to give you some insight into what their reactions were. Or I know a little bit more about the specifics of how the image is created, and things like that I might be able to give more insight into if something looks particularly good or doesn't, or if the sound field is intriguing or interesting, or if there's things that take it out. So, and other reviewers have different specialties. There may be movie reviewers out there that are really into the music and the dancing, the singing and the dancing, and are able to communicate that and understand that, and we're going to be able to tell you, oh, the dances in this movie are better than the dances in this movie. And I don't even know which movies to cite because I don't know and I don't care about dancing. So what was the second thing? So the second thing was you need to know how the person communicates. Now, I don't have a specific example of a specific actual reviewer here, but everybody communicates a little bit differently. And some people are going to use more flowery language, and some people are going to use more right down to it language, and some people are going to emphasize different things differently than others. Now, there's a website that I love called Kids in Mind. Now, this is not a review site. This site, what they do is they take movies and they tell you all the bad things about them as far as the content is concerned. They give a really brief synopsis of the movie. They don't try to rate it or rank it in any way. And then they just break down into these categories of sex and nudity, violence and gore, and strong language, negative language, profanity, things like that. And they give a score from 0 to 10 on all of those things. Or I'm not sure if they have zeros. Maybe it is 1 to 10. Anyways, whatever it is, 0 or 1 to 10. And the higher, the more of that stuff there is in there. But they also then go through and give specifics about what is actually going on. So with the profanity, it's fairly easy. They just say this many F words, this many mild obscenities, and when it's like sort of like goofy obscenities, they'll like sometimes list them. Like if they said something that was mean, but it was sort of like, oh, he's a flippy head, like, and they'll just list flippy head as something that somebody said as something that was mean, and they'll list whatever weird things people say mean to each other. But also, they will get quite specific on what happens in as far as violence is concerned and as far as sex and nudity is concerned. And so you can be reading it, and if you haven't seen the movie and if you haven't read this sort of stuff before, you will come away basically thinking that every movie is produced by the devil. Like, they make everything sound terrible because they just cut every little bad thing out of context and just tell you that. So you'll have a movie, say like The Princess and the Frog, and they'll take a scene in it and they'll be like, oh, there's women with cleavage dancing, and a woman says, oh, there's plenty of fillies that would give you a ride, things like that. So they'll just give these little things that are out of context, or even people in the background that are doing things that most people wouldn't even notice. And they list those things as specific things that happen in there, and they make the movie sound just terrible, just full of filth and garbage. But they're not. And so if you just read the things on that site and don't read any of the ones for movies that you've actually seen, then you won't understand how they're communicating, and you won't be able to appropriately respond to what they've written there. But once you read a few of movies you've seen that you're familiar with, and then you read something that you haven't seen, then you can get better context. And it's the same with actual movie reviews, that some people are going to be quite excited whenever they're talking about movies. And this is an interesting thing, is that I believe that most movie reviewers like movies in general more than the average person. Otherwise, why would they be doing this? Why would they be reviewing movies? I mean, unless they started out loving it and now they've been reviewing movies for a long time and they just hate everything. That could happen too. But I suspect most movie reviewers like movies more than the average person. And so there's going to be sort of a bias towards the positive in general. And so you need to get familiar with the reviewer to be able to have the appropriate context so you can understand, oh, well, this guy really likes this kind of thing, or this guy has a bias, he really likes World War II movies, and so this World War II movie, he says all World War II movies are great, so I can't take him at word for this, but then when it comes to romantic comedies or something, he's right on point, you know? So there's different things, and again, what is important to you is going to matter when it comes to that communication there. And then third, you got to know if you can even trust him at all. And this sort of is the compilation of the other two, is that do you even care what this reviewer thinks? Does it even matter to you? Because you might hear a review, you might listen to a review, you might read a review that you read it and it's terrible, right? It's, oh, this is the worst movie ever, blah, blah, blah. It's got terrible acting, it's got terrible characters, the sense of humor is terrible, everything is terrible in it. But then you might watch that movie and it could be your favorite movie of all time. There's a movie called The Perfect Score, which, having listened to it again, has way more profanity in it than I remembered. But it's a movie that I quite liked as a teenager. And I will listen to the commentary or a special feature or something where I believe it was the director was saying, you know, I don't expect to win any awards with this movie, but what I'm really trying to do is make somebody's favorite movie. And I think that's a great way to look at things, sort of, is that I don't know, I haven't looked and seen what review scores were for the movie The Perfect Score, but I suspect in general those review scores were not very high. But I quite like that movie, and I wouldn't be surprised if that is somebody's favorite movie. Because it's pretty funny. It's a funny movie. And it's got kind of an interesting story and reasonable character growth. It's sort of, you know, it's a little bit predictable and stuff, but it's overall, it's a pretty good movie. But a lot of reviewers probably didn't like it because it's sort of this teen comedy, coming of age thing, you know, and sometimes those reviewers just don't like that kind of stuff when it's played the way that it's played here. So, do you even care about that? Do you even care about the reviewer's opinion? And so you got to find a reviewer that you care about what they say. That the things that they say are actually meaningful to you, that they actually convey information to you that you care about, right? Because there's a lot of reviewers out there. There's thousands of us, okay? And we all have different things we care about. And we all have different opinions, especially when it comes to comedy, right? There's so many different comedies out there. There's so many different types of comedy. And you might love comedy that I hate. And if that's the case, then when it comes to the comedy movies, my reviews probably just aren't going to cut it for you. Right? And when I do a more in-depth review, I try to get a little more detailed on what sort of comedy is in there. But, you know, comedy is a complicated thing. And I like some stuff, like I like Home Alone, I like the Looney Tunes, I like stuff like that. That a lot of people, they just don't like that slapstick stuff, you know? And so do you even care if slapstick-loving guy says this Three Stooges is so great, do you even care? Right? And you can't know that until you've read some of the reviews that are for things that you've seen and you know what your reaction was to it. And then that will help you, right? You can get to know a reviewer a little bit and find out if their reviews are helpful to you at all. And that's why I think it's very important for you to read reviews for movies you've already seen. And I hope that I've said something of value to you, helped you to understand reviewers a little bit and how they can be useful to you. And I'm so glad that you watched this. Thank you very much. Have a lovely day.